Welcome back to WRPL, the podcast where we talk about all the things we are watching, reading, playing, and listening to. My name's Ben.
And I'm Steve.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, Ben. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. So today we are talking about Andor, the latest Disney's Star Wars live-action television show. A show that doesn't seem to be getting as much broad love, but much love from the people who have sat down, because I don't blame anyone for not watching this. It's more episodes than any other sort of thing. Same with like more than most Marvel shows, and it's about a character that people probably don't even remember from a movie that came out how many years ago. So yeah, Andor's our main topic, and we got a couple of other things to talk about. Little bit of news. Stop me if you don't give a shit. So,
all right, so you can stop.
So DC is pretty much like scrapping everything. Have you heard that?
I have. I mean, I think that's probably a great idea.
Probably smart, but like they just spent all this money and all this publicity of like, here's The Rock, he's the next big thing, and guess who's coming back? Henry Cavill, only to go like, nah, forget about all that. Who cares? Nobody cares.
Yeah, well, I mean, Black Adam apparently didn't make the money it needed to, and I wouldn't be surprised if Cavill doesn't actually care about coming back, even though we both have said like we would love to see Henry Cavill as Superman more. Plus,
I mean, just a side note, do you think this means he'll go back to Witcher 3 now that he's not like contracted with DC?
No, I think
he's done with it for other reasons.
Yeah, I think that might, from what I've like gathered, that might be more of an internal issue with just like writers who like have admitted they don't like the Witcher series and
I'm taking it my own
book
way.
series. I mean, just
why do they hire the people who don't know shit about it or don't care about it?
And then Cavill comes in, he's like, "This is my favorite shit. Like I know what's should be going on right now. I want to stay faithful to the books." And they're just like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
So who knows? And I mean, we get them for one more season that's coming out, and then I'm pretty sure they're just going to cancel it before we even get to the Hemsworth season.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
because Netflix is known to cancel plenty of stuff. So if you're losing your main draw and the guy who's kind of been on
one of your more expensive shows,
just
wrap it up and go. We'll do a finale animated, and then never deliver on it.
Yeah. Plus, there's that Witcher side series that it's like if that takes off, maybe they're like, all right, we'll keep Hemsworth around. But if that tanks, which I imagine it probably will, they'll just go, all right, we're done with the Witcher series.
But so yeah, it seems like James Gunn has just kind of come in and said, this doesn't work, this is the way I want to take it. And they said, okay. So everything is pretty much scrapped. Like Patty Jenkins put in her Wonder Woman 3 treatment, and they said, nah. They canceled any sort of like Man of Steel 2, I believe. Aquaman like is done, but they're keeping Jason Momoa because he may be Lobo. So that's I mean, before he was even cast as Aquaman, everyone was saying he needs to be Lobo. So it makes sense for them to like, why wouldn't he looks just like that character. It may be a little weird, but since it's not connected to probably continuity wise, who cares? Flash is still coming out. Well, they say it's coming out. Who knows? You would think they would just scrap that as well, but they've spent so much money on reshoots. It's like, we got to make something on it. Everything is pretty much done except for Blue Beetle will still come out, and Robert Pattinson's, or I should say Matt Reeves, the Batman, that will stay its own continuity, and we will still get a sequel for that. We're still getting the Penguin show. But everything else is just kind of like, kick rocks. I wonder what that means for Peacemaker. You know, does that change things? Or I
can't imagine it would, because that's the James Gunn show. Like, he wrote all those episodes.
Yeah, but it's like, if that was the continuity that Justice League is in, can we still use that? Or are we going to just go, it's a different dimension?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that hurt them is in the finale when you see them show up. Because, I mean, otherwise you could have just been like, yeah, Batman's an asshole, like, do all that spiel. But you never actually see them, so it's like he could be talking about other people.
Sure.
But because they put that tag at the end, I mean, I think it wouldn't be that big a deal ultimately.
No.
Because I think of the DC movies, the Suicide Squad, the sequel, was their most successful, and that was James Gunn. And they were like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He took a bunch of characters again that no one really knows anything about and made a successful movie.
Yeah.
Let's put him in charge of all of our stuff, which I think is a smarter move than Zack Snyder, who I don't hate, but has never been like the guy I would say, let's get him to run everything.
Yeah.
He'll be our
He's a perfectly
Russo
fine
brothers.
Yeah, he's a fine director, but he's not the guy to make all the decisions. Because, I mean, he was saying dumb shit of like, well, if I made a Batman movie, it'd be about how Bruce Wayne goes to jail and he gets raped all the time. Like, yeah, that's the Batman movie everybody wants to see. And like, he didn't even like Superman and he made a Superman movie. Like, why? I don't understand that. So I'm kind of glad.
Money.
Well, yes. So I'm glad they're kind of scrapping everything, and they really just need to like pump the brakes, realize not everyone could do a cinematic universe, and just start making good individual movies. Work on that first, because that was their downfall from the beginning before, is just rushing into it, trying to play catch up. Now, standalone, doesn't have to be in continuity. They can make little jokes and references if you want to, but that's fine. Just keep it as is.
And I'm sure, I think James Gunn hopefully knows a good casting director who picks people that aren't as problematic as it seems like more. Like, I don't know if there's ever been a franchise that has been so wrought with like bad publicity from its stars consistently.
Yeah,
it's interesting, and not like a thing where it's just like, oh, they've been accused of this one silly thing. It's like, oh, there's multiple cases.
Amber Heard, bad person. What's his name?
Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller, bad person.
Yeah.
And even like James Gunn got canceled too at one point. And if you look at the Disney stuff, nobody ever really has anything bad, because I'm sure Disney has a much tighter grip on their leashes than Warner Brother does. It was like the moment James Gunn was, quote unquote canceled, instantly let go. And it was smart of DC to snatch him up. So I think even if like Scarlett Johansson or Chris Hemsworth said the N-word or something, they would be able to squash it like so quick that we need to forget all of it, because Thor 5's coming out soon.
Well, if let's say Scarlett Johansson said that, it would just be like, well, guess who's appearing in Black Panther 3?
And she's going to get her ass kicked by the Dora Milaje. We're sorry.
I'm sorry.
So let's get into some of the things that we've consumed this week.
Okay.
I actually had a new Mountain Dew flavor, and I don't know if you've tried it, but it's their seasonal fruitcake.
I saw it in the store for the first time last week, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And let me go on a little side note.
Go for it.
When I was growing up in the 90s, fruitcakes on TV were everywhere. Like every time there was a cartoon, it's just like, "Oh, we got a fruitcake from Grandma," and someone would have like a closet just filled with her fruitcakes that they just never ate because it's heavy, so disgusting. Yeah,
or you can't cut it, or they would pull off the lid and then do that like, it was just like stink lines are coming off of it.
It was just always like the cartoon kids show classic joke of just like, oh, here's the disgusting Christmas food.
It's like broccoli or Brussels sprouts.
I don't know if I've ever seen a fruitcake or had fruitcake in my entire life.
Fruitcake.
It's just like it came and it disappeared, and it like, I guess everyone just like unified and just went, you know what? Fruitcake's gross. We're not having a Christmas, and like we just forgot about it. So now there's a fruitcake Mountain Dew.
If you go to Walmart, I'm sure there is a fruitcake you could buy in their little plastic clamshells. But I think the lovers of that are hidden like the lovers of candy corn. It's constantly being produced every holiday, but you talk to everybody and it's like, I don't eat that shit. That's nasty. So fruitcake is the candy corn of Christmas. Okay. And there's got to be like a dedicated group of people who are still buying it.
I feel like this was a thing where it's just like the Star Wars prequels came out, everyone hated it, and then enough time went past, we're like, no, what was kind of cool?
Yeah.
Fruitcake. And so now fruitcake's on this resurgence. Maybe? Just like, actually, the prequels of fruitcake are pretty good.
My grandma made me eat it, and I hated it, but I had it recently, and those jellied fruits are pretty good.
Yeah, they're coarse and rough. And
they just get everywhere. But so I would like to try a fruit cake. Maybe I'll make it my New Year's resolution.
I mean, fruit is one of my favorite things. Like fruit and cake as separate words. great. I love them. Put them together. I was like, oh, that's a match made in heaven. But I don't
But it's
know.
not
But all I
regular
know is that
fruit.
they're disgusting.
It's
but they
jellied
shouldn't
fruit.
be.
It's like almost like a squishy candy within a cake, not like actual fruit.
I see.
Because there's like blueberry muffins. Is that not a fruit cake? You know. But anywho, Mountain Dew fruit quake, and it is quake with a Q. I'm not trying to be cute and with a little silly lisp. It's fruit quake. It's pretty good. I actually liked it a lot. It's just Mountain Dew's version of a spiced apple cider.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
love
if you like that, you would love this. And I think
I'll give it a try.
It'd mix well with alcohol. It was pretty good, but it's definitely it had more of a tingle and a spice than that flaming hot bullshit. Like I actually not that I was like, ooh, this is spicy, but it was like, oh, this is way more intense than I expected. Very cinnamony. But yeah, thumbs up. I would get it again, but I don't think I would get it like with a meal. Yeah.
Sure.
So the video game awards happened over the weekend, or I think they were Friday, or maybe even Thursday. But anywho, they're done. And Steve, you're gonna give us a rundown of all 642 nominations and winners. I need to know the nominations for each category as well.
Sure. Let's
Did
see.
you watch any of them
Absolutely
as it was
not.
happening? No. I was like scrolling through TikTok and so many people were like showing it live and I'm like, I don't care. I like video games, but it seems like it's like 15 games and they're all just kind of those are the nominees for so many of the categories. It just gets kind of like old after a while. You boil it down to like 10 things, best game, best sports game, best RPG, best first person shooter. You do a couple of subsets. That's all I need. But I'm sure there's a lot of awards for sound and music and directors and script writing and voice acting. Like they really just like, hey, if the Oscars aren't going to like give awards for every little thing, we're going to do it. So what were some of the big ones?
Well, I won't go through category, but obviously the big talk was who's going to win Elden Ring or God of War. They both had the most nominations. Pretty much any category where you could that specific type of game could be nominated, they were nominated. Yeah. And I believe God of War took home the most awards.
Okay.
The Christopher Judge, who played Kratos, won Best Actor in a Game, which is well deserved in my opinion.
Sure.
Apparently his speech was like 8 minutes long.
Really? Especially since his character is generally about 8 words max. That's awesome.
Which, like, I imagine as an audience member is atrocious amount of time because 8 minutes doesn't really sound like a lot, but like when you're just seeing a guy stand on stage and just like talk about himself.
But with that voice, I don't know. I may be a little captivated.
It could be. And I didn't watch it because like it just sounded like something that might be cringy, and I just avoid that kind of thing. But like the music even like came on and they just came on and he just talked louder.
You should have just looked over and went, no.
Yeah. But I'm glad he won because his performance in God of War was just phenomenal. Arcane, a show we both love, took home Best Video Game Adaptation.
Cool. Probably not a hard category to win.
Yeah, it was up against Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Uncharted, The Cuphead Show, which I heard is pretty good, and Cyberpunk, Edge Runners, which I also heard was
a better year than most years.
Yeah. We all knew Uncharted was going to take it.
I just saw a thing that Uncharted and I mean Sonic 2 it makes sense, but Uncharted, Sonic 2, things like the Secrets of Dumbledore, all those movies made more than Black Adam. Fucking Uncharted made more than Black Adam. The worst
with the biggest movie star other than maybe Tom Cruise
or Tom Holland. It's like the only reason it probably made so much money was because of
maybe that's the Rock's secret. He just needs to change his name to Tom.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. Tom the Rock Johnson. Tom the Rock Thompson. There you go. He gets 2 Thompson there.
Oh, that's like it's synergy. You got to do it, Rock. You got to be a Tom. You got to be double Tom. There's too many Toms.
But yeah, God of War won Best Narrative, Innovation and Accessibility, which I guess just means like new players can come in and
no, it's the like all the things you can change of how bright do you want
okay.
this sound, do you want camera shake. There's in like Last of Us 2 had a lot of that stuff. Like there are blind people who beat Last of Us 2 because there are options that allow you to play this game if you're blind. Like there's just so many of those sort of options to play this game.
Which like specifically Last of Us, that'd be an interesting thing of just like I can't see what's going on. Is that more terrifying than actually seeing the clickers?
I don't know.
I don't
But
know.
if you've never seen anything ever, is a clicker scary? Like, I don't know. Dogs can be scary when they run up and lick me. I don't know what the fuck that is. I'm blind. I've never seen what a dog looks like. They can have like weird horns that I can't see.
Jesus Christ. But yeah, God of War, best action adventure. Most anticipated game is Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, which that makes sense. Everyone's
Is that Breath of the Wild too?
Breath of the Wild too, essentially. Okay. Yeah. Which I love Breath of the Wild. Audio design, God of War, Kirby One family game, racing game, esports. We don't care about sports or racing stuff. Score, soundtrack, God of War again.
But not Game of the Year, I'm assuming.
But Game of the Year went to Elden Ring. Elden Ring won, I think, I am looking at the list and it's all conjumbled. It won 2 or 3 awards, I think, but it took home Game of the Year, which, like, I'm not upset that it won, but I was rooting for God of War.
Sure.
But the fact that God of War won essentially everything other than that, I'm cool with it. It won enough.
It's like
also awards are stupid.
Very much so. At the Oscars, it's like best director, best actor, best screenplay, best cinematographer, but it's not best picture. Like, how is that possible? How could you have all the best elements, but it doesn't work out? But like, hey, you like these 3 ingredients, you put them in a bowl and eat it together. It's like, well, pickles, ice cream, and tomatoes just doesn't work together.
Right.
So yeah, and it seems like with Elden Ring, there was a leap in I don't want to say innovation, but it's like a much better game than the previous ones. They really stepped it up.
Mm-hmm.
God of War is pretty much the same level as the previous one. If this game came out like a year after, I wouldn't be surprised because I don't feel too much has changed. It's very much the same game. Obviously they made some excellent changes, which I'll get into. But there's more of a leap of quality, I would say, from one game to the next. So it doesn't upset me. I'm never gonna play the game, but yeah, I know who's the real good one. About any big surprises or anything? Do you know? Did they?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where I think games evolve in the future, because I think just hearing multiple people in the movie industry and everything talk about it, just like movies. I think we'll always have movies, we'll always have TV shows, but in terms of like peak interest, it's leaning towards the video game world. Mm-hmm. It's like, so I mean, video games, certain ones make more than the biggest movie of the year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They sell $1 billion, like Call of Duty and all that stuff, like huge numbers.
Yeah. There's not multiple billion-dollar movies in a year. You may get 2, but there's multiple billion-dollar games every year.
And I think, especially if you look at something like God of War, where you can be captivated by performances and they are telling these long-form, interesting stories, it's like, for the longest time, there wasn't my parents didn't play video games. Your parents didn't play video games. We're kind of the first generation that will have kids who are like, oh yeah, dad plays video games with me. I'm still, you and I are still part of that generation where like, I think a lot of girls still didn't play video games because like they were just like, oh, that's a dorky boy thing. But like now it's pretty much 50-50.
Yeah, it's just an entertainment thing.
Yeah, like all my nieces, all my nephews, they've all at least played a video game. And I don't mean like they went to a friend's house to pick up, like, I mean, they owned it and like play a Nintendo Switch or whatever it is. So I think in the next 15, 20 years, it's just going to be video games are going to be the main thing. And we'll see that transition. So that'll be exciting. But until then, movies. What was your question? You were asking about upsets. So I don't think there was like any real upsets. I think because like the biggest games, you only get like really 2 front runners, maybe a third that's like kind of a dark horse, but like no one really expects it to win that much. But I will say the game Stray, I think, won best independent game, and it was
Okay.
nominated for best game, which I was like, that was kind of cool to see. Just
Yeah.
a small little indie game about a cat walking around a robot city.
Even my roommate, a girl who doesn't play video games, played that game.
Yeah.
So,
It was kind of the Hades of this
mm-hmm.
year. Not, I don't think it's as beloved as Hades by any
No.
means, but it won, I think, the same category, and it was just like this little dark horse thing. It was just like, oh, it even got nominated. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know it's not gonna win, but it's like, oh, cool, like this small game
Yeah.
is well received. I still want to play Stray.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not gonna pay full price for it quite yet.
Yeah.
So,
But and I wanted a cat, being a cat game. And this, yeah, you're a cat, but I don't like the robot stuff. And yeah, oh, you could scratch your claws on this couch, but it doesn't do anything. It's just a visual thing for you to go, oh, look, a cat that does that thing. I want to be a cat in a backyard, in a neighborhood. You have pre-existing yards and some that have dogs and chase squirrels. And I want to do real cat stuff, not have a little robot AI that follows me around and pushes buttons for me.
sure. I think you're looking for the Untitled Goose Game, but instead of goose, you're a cat.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just a little animal that gets into mischief around a cute, adorable neighborhood.
And you can have missions of like, scare these birds away because they're picking on your kittens, or avoid the snake that's in the garden. There's lots of stuff, and you could have dogs chasing you, and you got to cross the street and it's perilous. All that stuff. It's just Stray feels very much like a on rails, go this way and interact with the thing that we say interact with this. It's all just like a walking simulator, pretty much.
Sure. But in terms of video game announcements, there's some franchises that were announced that I'm sure people are excited about that either I don't give a shit about, I'm sure you don't give a shit about.
Yeah.
But two games I am possibly excited about, we'll see, is Hades 2.
Okay.
Dropped a trailer for that, and I'm just a big fan of mythology, and I had fun with the Hades game, even though it's somewhat hard. But I enjoyed it enough where I might pick up the sequel. Like, it was pretty cool. I never played a game like it. And then Jedi Fallen Order 2, but called,
Don't know.
I forget. The trailer
The new
looked
Cal Kestis. No,
Cal
not
Kestis.
Cal Kestis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the first one, but as fun as it's probably the best lightsaber combat.
Yeah.
But just like by the end, I didn't find it as fun as I was hoping it to be.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to hit a stormtrooper like 50 times. I just want to be able to mow these dudes down.
Force Unleashed.
Yeah, I want to be really, really good at this game.
And it's a hard game.
Yeah.
Like,
once I switched
your ass.
Yeah, I switched it to easy and
Absolutely.
had a way better time.
So much fun.
It's so much fun once it's on easy. So this game looks like they stepped up the combat and gave you more dual wielding, and it looks like you kind of get like a Kylo Ren lightsaber at one point. It looks fun, but that's the problem with trailers. They're supposed to look fun, and will all depend on if the story's any good and if everything I disliked combat-wise was improved upon in this one. I'll wait for reviews to see if I pick it up, but I'm cautiously optimistic about those two games because I was more or less a fan of both, even though I wouldn't put either of them in my top 10 or anything like that.
No, not at all. And fix your start and end parts, like having to travel across this huge ass map to come all the way back to your ship. Have multiple landing pads for your ship in different parts, like 3 per level, and it may not be the ideal one for you go to, but you can go to it, and it's like, well, you have to wait for your ship to make it around the base, and then they send a bunch of waves. Like, you're supposed to go to your ship. They have that secured there. You're safe if you go to that one. It's going to be a longer trip. You can go to this easy one, but we're going to send a bunch of enemies at you, so you earn this kind of shortcut. If you do something like that, I'll be happy.
Well, I mean,
too much backtracking.
It's just a simple matter of just like, all right, BB-8, I forget the robot's name, and we're just gonna call him BB-8 because why not? It's like, all right, BB, you put the ship in the air, and when I need you, I'll call you up. And then it's like you get to a point where you're like, all right, well, I want to go back to that other planet. Like, I'm at the halfway point here. All right, BB, beam me up or whatever. And then
they don't have.
I know they don't have beams, but they put like a little thing.
Throw a rope down.
Throw a rope down. He puts his foot in. He pulls himself up, and then you just off to the next planet. You don't even have to land really, because also you're a Jedi. You just jump out of planes. You're like Captain America. You'll land. It's fine. So yeah, we'll see.
So speaking of video games, I promised I'd finish God of War by today. I did not. I have like 27 hours into it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I was, I think, between like 35 and 40 when I
Okay.
finished it,
Yeah,
somewhere around
and
there.
I feel like we're in the final act now. I have gotten the new third weapon, which is a spear. Called it. Uh, Love it. I've only fought a few people with it, but I like fighting with that thing.
Mhm.
I like chucking it, and then you could explode them. That's amazing. Uh, so obviously we can't talk about ending or anything like that, but I just want to give you some of my thoughts.
Okay.
I love this game. It's so much fun. I just once
Is it
you
your game of the year, Ben?
well, of the, very few games that I've played this year, probably. It's just once you get the hang of what buttons do what and what enemies you should fight with what weapons and what environments around can you use to your advantage, it's just so damn fun. It has some of the most fun combat. And I was talking to Nick about it. I think I feel the way about God of War like people feel with Bloodborne or Dark Souls, where you just kind of get it and it feels right. And yes, they're kind of similar. You got to parry, you got to roll, you got to hit,
Mhm.
certain spots, and one hit could potentially kill you from some of these guys. But I think it just feels so much better than any of those Dark Soul games.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've never really like spent much time with it, but even watching clips of it, it just looks more like it's Dance Dance Revolution. It's
Mhm.
Parappa the Rapper. You're just find the pattern, repeat over and over again. And I think there's a God of War is maybe a little more like jazz. You find the notes in between. Yes,
Are
they
you la la landing me right now?
and I don't know. It's the trial and error of what works, what doesn't work, and switching between different weapons. It's so much fun, and they can be a little chaotic because you always seem to have someone with you, whether it's Brock or Sindri or Freya or
Atreus.
Atreus, the main one. But just using them to your advantage of like, oh shit, he's about to charge. I send a bomb over and it disrupts him and it opens him up enough for me to get in there and do one of my special moves. So I'm having a blast just fighting. And at first, I didn't love the level design. It was just like, well, is this going to be like one big fucking river the whole time? It just seemed to go on and on. And it's yeah, a couple of big rivers, but I didn't realize how the world system worked yet.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that like all the realms are there or represented in one way or another. I think it's just it's easier. The last game, you had to spin that dial right in the middle of the
Yeah.
lake. It just seemed like a whole bunch, and some of the worlds were just grind things or trials.
Sure.
So everything's like fleshed out a bit more. But that level design can be such a fucking pain in the ass. It's weird. It holds your hand and it doesn't. Where some things just you don't see where you're supposed to go, and you're running in circles, and then until you like poke around one corner and go like, oh Jesus Christ, there was a chain hanging over there. I didn't see that the whole time. And but they handhold you where your companions will just be like, so maybe we should find a different angle to approach that thing. And sometimes they'll like it's nice when you're like, fuck, which way am I supposed to go? And then they run and you go, okay, I'll just follow them. And then oh, they went right. Well, there's a left over here. I gotta go left first. And of course there's a treasure chest there. Um, but some of the bosses have been hard, but some of them have not been hard.
Mhm.
The tombstones where you get the key and you unlock it and you get like a little arena around the tombstone and you have to fight. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the Valkyries
Yeah,
of
yeah.
this one. There's one on the ice that's just kicking my fucking ass. Like it was so frustrating because it was like 2 hits and you're dead. And I'm trying my best. And after the 20th time, I was like, fuck this. I got regular.
I can't believe you did it 20 times.
Well, I get like, okay, I see the pattern now. I could do it. Oh wait, I died kind of cheaply there. Let me try it again. Oh, I got further that time. Let me try it one more time. And then eventually it's like, no, fuck this. But there's one right after getting the spear that you fight, and I killed him on like I think my second life. He was really, really easy, and it just made me feel so fucking cool. The thing I love and hate. So I beat a mission and it's like, hey, Kratos, if you want to continue doing the main mission, you want to go left. But if you want to help me do this thing and fuck around a bit, let's go to the right. And it was after like you made Nicey Nice with Freya.
Mhm.
I was like, all right, let's do a Freya thing. And you got to find her wedding chapel and destroy a bunch of stuff. But then you're also finding like ghosts on the beach
Mhm.
and they're asking you to do mini missions. And so I'm doing those. And then her thing's taking me for. I spent one night. I'm trying to put like 4 to 5 hours of this a day after I get off work. 4 hours I was doing this fucking side mission that I didn't really have to. Yes, I got a lot of like extra Freya stuff.
Sure.
She got a better sword and she more leveling up. But my God, I was so pissed at myself. I was like, just focus on the story. But that's one of the things I love about this game. You could just go like, hey, you want to do this little favor? And it turns into this big sprawling thing, unlocks a whole different part of the map you didn't know was there. And there's so many different enemy variations in this. Like
Mhm.
the last game seemed to have like 8. This has so many, and maybe some of them are just palette swaps, but they're really fun fights. I
Mhm.
haven't found anything that has been really, really obnoxious yet. Not yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
So you talked about game mechanics, just in terms of like where you are in the story. We won't get into the story because we'll save that for next week. Just how do you feel about the story so far? Has there been a moment where you're just like, man, I really like that scene, or like this, I feel like is I like where this is going. I don't like where this is going. Is there any of that kind of stuff, or
No,
is it just like this is all great?
I do like all the story so far. Nothing's really irked me. There's that whole stuff with Atreus and the young girl who's showing him his destiny, and it's a lot of go pick this fruit while we're on the back of my bison, and it's just a story beat. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of gameplay, so some of those I'm like, okay, I get it. You're telling a wonderful sprawling story, but let's fucking get on. It takes a long time. So some of that and then now I'm like in Asgard and it's Thor's daughter.
Throod.
Yes, who's, I could tell he's going to like have a crush on this one as well cuz he just seems to be so nervous around girls. But can you blame him? He's just been around his dad the whole time.
Right.
But I like all the Kratos is gonna die sort of Destiny stuff, and how is that gonna happen? I'm pretty sure I'm gonna make my guess now. They're gonna kill Kratos since this is the last game. You just kill him off and be done with it. You could always make more Atreus games if you wanted to continue the series, but I'm saying Kratos will die. But yeah, I'm liking the story. I like that Freya and him were finally able to like hash out their beef
Mhm.
and have some beef hash. Uh, yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Okay, great.
Well, one thing I want to talk about for when it comes to story and characters is I like how everybody doesn't talk like they're from any time period. Like Odin, like obviously his character model looks just like the actor. I can't remember his name, but he's like a New York lawyer character that you've seen. Like you've seen him in a million things, and it's like they chose this guy for Odin. That's so strange. And everybody kind of just says like, yeah, whatever, and they just talk like normal people. But you have a few like Thor is very much like of that time. But then Odin speaks to him, and it's just like they're totally worlds apart when it comes to performances. And it should bug me, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean it's one thing I think no one ever really talks about, but I do like that, and it makes sense because whenever we watch like a fantasy show, they're always British,
Yeah.
always. Unless they're like dwarves, then they're Scottish.
Yeah.
But in the fantasy realm, and I think we're seeing other shows do it now, where it's like, know what? Accents don't fucking matter.
Yeah.
You can have American, you can have British. Star Wars does it.
Yeah.
It's just like, so what I like about this game is just like, you have all these like groups of people talking, and it also helps differentiate them when they all have different accents and different voices and stuff. It's just like, okay, like you can easily pick these people out. They're not all doing some British accent to sound more fantastical. It's just like, no, they're from all different realms. Of course, they'd all sound different.
Yeah.
Which is
no, everyone in the past was British.
Yeah. But yeah, the only thing I want to add to what you were saying about the game is, well, first Odin. of all the characters in the game, he seems the most out of place,
Yeah.
which I agree with.
But that could also be like, I've been around forever, man. I'm kind of lost my mind. I'm not as regal as I used to be, so I'm just kind of playing fast and loose.
Because like if you look at the God of War, the original trilogy, you have Zeus, who's your classical like big, boisterous,
Yeah.
muscly, like he looks like God kind of character. So you had that guy. So it's like, all right, well, how do we differentiate the father of all Greek gods versus the father of all Norse gods? It's like, oh, you just make him you make him small. You're not going to make him this big guy like Thor is, because
Yeah.
that's Thor's thing. He's the big guy. It's like, well,
I love Thor. Great design.
and it's like, all right, well, we've had these kooky character gods. Like some guys are tough. Some guy like Heimdall's a total fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we want Odin to be this like almost sly, like he plays the mind games. Like that's what makes him powerful, because he's like the smartest. Like, yeah, he's super strong because he is a god, but he doesn't need to do that. He's a strategist, and I like that they just kind of made him not threatening, but like there's always this looming threat of just like, what could he do? Because I don't know where his motivation lies. So I ended up liking that guy's performance, but I can see other people going like, that's not how I imagine Odin, but I like
Sounds
that.
like a modern New York lawyer. What is this?
And the last thing I'll just say is, from you're talking about game design and like, is this just one long river? Especially in later parts of the game, this is another example where like you're not running into civilians like practically ever. But it also just feels so lived in, because like there's a part in the end, it's essentially just this big open area that's kind of like, here's a bunch of side missions you can do just to like kill time, and they're all like somewhat challenging. But like you can be doing this thing, and in the background there'll be a dragon flying around, and it'll just land and it just like doing its own thing while you're climbing the wall. You can just see this thing going on, and if that's like just a boss you can fight in the background, but it's not something that's hidden. It's just like almost calling you to it.
Yeah.
But it just feels like there's all this stuff constantly going around, and it's like, it's not hiding it from you. It's just like, oh, there's a thing you can fight, but it just helps it feel more like real, and that there's other things going on in the world other than just like you doing your thing.
Yeah, most things are like teeming with life. There's monkeys and birds, and like you could kill a lot of them, but you don't get any sort of points. There's deer just drinking from the stream behind you, and you can't interact with it, but it's there. It just makes it seem so much more livelier than some of the Tomb Raider games, where if you saw an animal, it's probably there to kill you, and it's just like leaves. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful game. Just amazing. It's like just desert, but it's like these pink rocks and the way the sun is, and the snow or sand blowing across in the wind. It's a real pretty game.
Yeah. And I think it's great that it's like, oh, you're going to revisit all the worlds you've been to, but they look nothing like they did in the first game. It's like, yeah, you're going back to Midgard. It's the exact same level, but now it's all covered in snow.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to Alfheim, land of the elves, and it's like, well, that was just like this beautiful, gorgeous light temple, where it's like, oh, now it's kind of like jungly, not jungly,
just
overgrown, but also once you get out of the overgrown area, it's desert. So it's the only thing that like really remained the same is Muspelheim, which Muspelheim, because you can't really change the fire realm. It's just a big volcano area, But what you do there, there's story beats that you haven't gotten to that go there, and that's kind of somewhat interesting. But visually, it's the least appealing of the worlds, because they even changed Niflheim, the land of gas, that was just like the grind area. I forget exactly what it is now.
Isn't it like red rocks? Isn't it kind of like reddish?
Doesn't matter.
Whatever.
But yeah, just an incredible game, and we'll talk more about it next week once you finish it.
Hopefully, I should finish it by next week. I'll probably finish it, but I really want to do all this side stuff. I can't wait to start jumping back into land. Whenever they go like, whew, that was a tough mission, Kratos. If you want to go try out your spear for a while, you could just meet us back here when you're ready to continue. And I'm like,
you know what?
I really want to, but then I'm looking at the map like, that's all a journey and stuff. Now stick to it. I could come back for this stuff. And I don't know how you like didn't upgrade your armor and stuff until the very end. I've been upgrading the whole time, but it's fallen into some of the same bullshit. I picked one at the beginning because it was the best defense,
Hmm.
and I thought it was the ugliest. But I've been upgrading it and adding stuff and yada yada yada. And no matter what I pick up or have able to craft, mine is still better than that. So it has tons and tons of armor in it that I'm never going to use because I'm going to have to take status bumps in order to look cooler.
Well, yeah, but you're going backward. Like, so let's say you had a level 2 armor, which because you said you got at the beginning or whatever, and you've upgraded that, so now it's stronger than the stuff you've been getting. Well, that's just like indication that, okay, well, if you have a level 2 armor and it's upgraded really well, and now you're finding level 7 armors, if you just upgrade that level 7 armor a little bit,
it's not that. It's always, I'm a level 4, I find a level 4. And it's always the same level, but it's worse. Oh, now I'm a level 5. Oh, now I can craft a level 5 of something else, but it's worse. I never find or get anything better than what I have. Never any jumps of like between 4 and 7 or anything. Sure, I can, and then that's another thing. If I jump to a different armor because I go, oh, I do like the perk it gives me and it looks cooler, I've wasted all that money and all those resources building that one armor up that now I have to like start over with another one. So I might as well just stick with what I got.
Well, sure, but I mean, the game isn't like stingy on your stuff. Like I think it wants you to encourage you to be like, get better armor and upgrade that or whatever. But I mean, maybe that's where you and I differ. It's like I hoarded all that stuff because I knew like, well, I don't want to use all this up. So when I get to the late game and now I can't afford the upgrades I want because I spent it all like constantly upgrading every different armor I got.
But weren't you getting your ass rocked the whole time with your level 1 armor?
Well, no, because I upgraded to higher level armors I'm level 2. I can wear level 2 or whatever it is.
So you didn't care what it looked like or the perk or anything. You just always
no. I mean, I did. It's just I always took the better stats over, because usually the perks that were like interchangeable, like that perk doesn't really matter to me, but the stats are good. Like there was pluses and minuses to everything. I never really cared what I looked like. I mean, obviously, I always like wore the whole set.
Yeah. No mixing.
Yeah, I'm not mixing pieces. That's awful. But yeah, as I progressed through the game, I might wear level 2 armor, even though a level 3 is available. But if I got to a 4 armor, which is clearly better than 2, then I would pick level 4. Like it wasn't just like, just because I got a new piece of armor, I wore that. Okay. I always picked whatever had better.
You just never added any sort of.
Not until I got to the very last mission where I was just like, oh, this is the end game. I might as well just soup my shit up. And yeah, there's a part where you get to the end and then they may or may not hand you something, and they're just like, we're going into the end game. And you're like, all right, well, this is the one. Of course, I'm going to soup up.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
And then I still had plenty left over. It was like, okay, well, if I want to wear a different armor, or if I find, because I think there's like even stronger armors than the one you get towards the end that you may or may not get.
You're so vague, Steve. What are you talking about?
So so even though I spent a ton of it, I still have plenty left over to where it's like, okay, if I want to continue, then I can still do all that stuff. There's so much to do in this game.
Yeah, God, there's so
but
much.
It's not like tedious. It's not collect 100 feathers like you're in an Assassin's Creed game. It
has plenty of that. Kill the 100 Odin's ravens. If you want to do those.
There's like 48.
Oh, 48 of them. But then they also have like just your basic stats of like, do this sort of kill 50 times. And not just like the skill or move perk. And I've gotten plenty of those now. It's just like, jump off a ledge 100 times, and it just like they keep track of all these little like.
Yeah, but that's just for bonus experience though. That's not like it's not in-game missions required, which is what. Yeah, like I can.
It's not an Assassin's Creed.
Sure, yeah.
Which I did you play Assassin's Creed Odyssey?
I did.
I heard that was just like, hey, there's 50 scrolls and 50 birds and 50 feathers and 50 eggs and 50 rocks, and it's like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so. I was a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed games 1 through 4, essentially. Like, and I guess that's including the 2 side ones of 2, because there was 2, then Brotherhood, and then Revelations or whatever. I played all those. Those were all great. Black Flag, awesome. And then I think Origins came. That was the Egyptian one. Came after that, and I didn't play that one. And then Odyssey came out, and I was like, oh, Romans with Assassin's Creed, awesome. I fucking hate that game. I didn't even finish it. I put plenty of hours into it, like probably over 20, and it was so impressive how big this world was, and you can get on ships and all that good stuff, but it wasn't, you couldn't like insta-kill fucking anybody unless they were like the lowest of the low. It was just like everyone leveled up with you, and you had to like hack and slash all the time, and plus there was this like 50,000 side missions that I kept getting sidetracked on. And like I couldn't even follow the story because like I hadn't played the main storyline in like 4 hours because I was doing this other bullshit that I thought mattered that didn't. It was like there's a lot that's impressive about Assassin's Creed, but Assassin's Creed has just gotten so, I think, it's not even like a sci-fi story anymore. It's just like, look at this open world thing where you can do a bunch of shit.
And we're historically accurate.
Which can be like cool.
Yeah.
But when I'm like 60 hours in this game and like I don't know what the fuck the story is, or like it's just loosely sci-fi stuff, and it's just like at least the first 3 had like a real cohesive story. And even though I don't remember the story of Black Flag at all like the pirate ship stuff was just so much fucking fun. But Assassin's Creed is a franchise I have essentially given up on. Like I kind of got a little excited for Valhalla. I was like, oh, Vikings, and then like you can dual wield, like this looks cool. And then the reviews came out, and they're like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well then I'm just done with Assassin's Creed unless they come out with a game that's just like, this shit is the best.
Yeah. It seems like I'm stuck on a deserted island and I get one game. Yeah, I'm going to take Assassin's Creed Odyssey because there's thousands of hours of things to do. I'm not going to take, Limbo.
Yeah.
And play that for the rest of my life. But all right, let's move on. We're getting long already. We got lots to talk about. Steve, what have you consumed this week?
I listened to a new horror podcast. I call them podcasts, even though because I just don't know what else you would call audio
books,
audio narratives.
Yeah.
So
someone told you a story through the computer.
So on Spotify there is a audio narrative called Quiet Part Loud. It is from Monkey Paw Productions, produced by Jordan Peele.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like the only reason I gave this thing a shot.
You said quiet part loud or out loud?
Quiet Part Loud.
Quiet part loud.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, as in the phrase, you said the quiet part loud?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
The phrase never really comes up in the... I haven't looked up why.
Have you heard that phrase before, though?
Never heard of it.
Where, and like someone, they're saying some sort of like, let's say a racist rant, and they're trying to be vague about things, but then they say something overtly racist, and it's like, oh, you said the quiet part out loud. Like you're supposed to keep that inside.
Well, that makes sense in context to what this story's about. So Quiet Part Loud is about this kind of conservative alt-right radio show kind of guy, and it's like right after it's the story begins like kind of post 9/11, and so he's just on his radio show and just like, the Muslims are in our country and they're here and we should all be afraid. And these 3 boys, they went and they disappeared. Did they join Al Qaeda? Yada yada yada. And so now it's like 10 years later, the boys haven't been found. The family that he kind of harassed is just like, he meets up with the daughter of the sister of one of the boys who went missing, and she's just like, you made my family's life a living hell because you and your like fans have just like harassed Muslims and all this kind of stuff. But there may be a more supernatural, sinister plot at hand.
Okay.
There may or may not be this creature that uses sound to kind of like possess people, and it wants this radio host for his voice and his influence. And so it's kind of like, how do we defeat this creature that just moves through sound? And there's some really cool audio work in it in terms of just like, oh, if you heard this is like really creepy sounding, or the voice will come in and it's like, Rick, I want you raw, like that kind of stuff, I'm not doing it justice, but
sure. Is there music and sound effects as well?
Yeah, music, sound effects, acted really well. It's just, I didn't really get into the story that much, which is a shame. Like I said, there's some parts that are kind of creepy effectively, but I always kind of it just seemed like they were in one place and then it just went to the next scene. I was like, I had trouble wait, where are we? Or how did we get here? There was just a lot of jumping around, and like then they started talking about something. I was like, wait, who was that character again? Like it just didn't flow as well. Like each episode's only like 15 to 20 minutes, and there's 12 episodes, so it'd take like roughly 3 hours to finish it all. It leads to a finale that I liked, but it just seemed like by episode 10 we were kind of over, but there were still 2 episodes to go. Even though they weren't long, I was like, all right, I'm ready for this to wrap up, because like the sound design is kind of creepy at times when this creature speaks, but if I'm not seeing it, it kind of like doesn't engulf me in like horror like I would want it to. And plus, like, your main character is a conservative asshole, and even though like he does things where like it makes you kind of start liking him, he still built this army of like assholes who are just like, oh yeah, Rick, you say the call, man, we'll be there and we'll take down these immigrants and all like that kind of stuff. It's like, oh god, like, so he's not a good dude. That's like, so you're already starting off a show where you're like, I'm against this guy immediately, and then I have a villain I can't see, and it just loses some of the horror elements to that.
That sucks.
So yeah, but
you started another one.
But I started another one, and it's pretty good so far, and I'm looking forward to see where that one goes. I'll talk about that next week, because this one's I think the same amount of episodes, but even shorter episodes. Length. And
shorter in length, but same amount of episodes.
Same, yes, exactly.
Well, what's the title of that?
That is Case.
In case someone wants to listen to it real quick and then catch up for next week.
So I'm listening to Case 63, starring Oscar Isaac and Julianne Moore. And Oscar Isaac, Julianne Moore is a therapist, and her patient, I think his name's Peter, otherwise known as Case 63. He claims to be from the future, and he's here to save the world. And so it's a
K-Pax situation.
Never saw K-Pax, but sure. But it's just that you can tell the difference in quality of actors. Like from Quiet Part Loud, they're all perfectly good actors, and actually Christina Hendricks is in it. She's a voice, and I didn't know this until the end, but Taron Killam is the creature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but like they alter his voice so much. Like there's only a couple times where like you can kind of hear his like original voice. But yeah, like Oscar Isaac and Julianne Moore are just great. And it's so weird that like you don't see their face, you're just listening to them talk in a room, and it's just like, man, this is a way better movie than this other thing. It's and the story's interesting. I'm looking forward to it, so we'll see if that one just like tanks at the end. But from a first 3 episodes I listened to, I was like, okay, I'm into this one.
Cool.
Yeah.
And they're both on Spotify? Interesting. Yep. And they're in their original content from Spotify?
I think they're from it looks like a Gimlet Productions. I think they're both from the same thing. I don't know if it's just like one company who's putting all these out, because I reviewed we talked about the Batman one and the Vampire Hunter one, which both of those I liked. But yeah, so I don't know if it's the same company or different companies who are just like, hey, podcast is a new thing, so we're going to do audio narratives with like actual big name actors in it and stuff.
Cool.
But it's pretty cool that I like that these sort of old-timey radio shows are kind of coming back into the fold. Yeah. It's like you don't have to have a visual component to it. Like you can just listen to a story.
Love it. I'm all for that. So I watched this really interesting video essay on YouTube. Have you ever heard of the YouTube channel Defunct Land?
I have not.
So Defunct Land initially started, and I haven't watched all of his episodes because some of them can be quite long. But they were mainly about amusement park attractions that don't exist anymore, and either they got replaced because they were old and run down and they were making room for new things, or they broke down and someone got hurt, or it was an interesting idea but maybe it was a little dangerous, so they got rid of it. And he just kind of highlights these things from all around the world of these defunct coasters. And he does a lot of Disney stuff. He has a video out. It's pretty long. I'm gonna watch it, and I'll probably have a talk about it next week. But it's all about the history of Fast Pass, and just like how it was like the worst fucking thing that ever happened, and how it created these crazy lines and just made tons of money for Disney, but made the whole park experience that much worse. So I'm interested in that. But this one was just about the creation of the Disney theme. Now, like Nickelodeon, everybody knows the the station ID. Like, do you know Disney, like the Disney channels like 4-note song?
I guess not.
Yeah, neither did I. Like it didn't register, but it's like dun 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 dun. I didn't watch a lot of Disney Channel,
Oh, okay.
but so this guy said, well, we know who wrote the Nickelodeon one and we know who did the Cartoon Network one, but there is no listing for who wrote those 4 notes for the Disney Channel. So he goes in this crazy deep dive of when the Disney Channel was created, and they didn't run commercials.
This seems like an Atlanta bit.
They never ran commercials, so they always had like bumpers where commercial breaks would be, and it would, how the Disney stars would like draw the Mickey ears, and it's like the creation
Or
of
try
that.
to draw
try
the
to, but and he even goes into that, like the Hilary Duff has no idea what she's doing. They don't tell her you're drawing the Mickey ears and stuff. She kind of has to figure it out on her own. They just pretty much brought him in and said, here, you're going to make this motion and say, you're watching Disney, and smile, and then next. And then they would go into the next room, and then they'd have to talk about 9/11. No. Honestly, like they'd have these bumpers of like the, Tia and Tamara Mowry and stuff. And they're like, yeah, when I think about 9/11 that happened a year ago, it just makes me so sad. And then they would go do their like drawing
Also,
ears.
watch Sister.
Yeah.
And then stand back to back.
It was like that. Like they had a day of just like, we're throwing these kids through the ringer and they have to do all these different spots. And the creation of just like one woman, her job was to like put up factoids about fish a year before Nemo came out, because they wanted to make kids interested in all these fish facts, just so when Nemo came out, they'd be like, I like fish. I want to go see the fish movie.
Jesus
Lots
Christ.
of crazy stuff. It's such a fascinating watch. And
Now this feels like a Joe Rogan podcast.
and he's talking to all these people who work for Disney and wrote bumpers and things, like, well, do you know who did the 4 notes? And everyone's like, nope, I have no idea. We just knew that what those notes were, and we had to incorporate it in to our things. And they'd all have different variations. Some are faster, some are slower, some are with different instruments, but nobody really knew. And he does find out who wrote it.
Is it inside of a Disney vault? There's an alien that is just like making music for Disney.
No, he was just a man named Alex Lazarenko. He's dead now, and he like, if he would have still been alive, it may have been easier for him to find. But like, this guy has like barely any pictures on the internet. He was just a musical guru, and just did a lot of work for creating stations of other cable stations. And there's more about him. And then he goes on and rants about like being a YouTube person and not a quote unquote documentarian. That's just a lot. It's an hour and a half long. It's well worth your time. It's very interesting. All of his videos are really interesting, but Defunct Land on YouTube. Check it out.
Awesome. All right. Well, I watched a movie, Oscar bait movie called The Fablemans, directed by a young up-and-coming filmmaker. You might have heard of him, named Steven Spielberg.
A man who did not direct the latest Indiana Jones.
Much to my embarrassment and surprise and chagrin.
I really was surprised about that, because I figured that was one of his babies.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there was anything behind it about, well, I can't do it. I'm doing all this other stuff, but we have to make it. Or if he was just like, yeah, I don't care about doing another Indiana Jones. Go nuts.
Yeah, because I would figure Harrison Ford wouldn't do it unless Spielberg was doing it.
You would think.
But maybe it was just like, I wanted to do it, but Harrison Ford needs to do it now, and I'm working on Fableman, so let's get him in. And
they said, we'll give you enough money to buy another plane that you can crash. And Harrison Ford was just like, that's my thing. I like getting high and crashing planes, so of course I'll do this movie. I don't care who the director is.
But at least to his credit, that trailer did seem Spielbergian.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a good pick.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Fablemans, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner, who has worked with Steven Spielberg on Munich and West Side Story and Lincoln. They're back together again to tell the story of Steven Spielberg's childhood. And a lot of people have been talking about this movie. It's everyone says it's going to be nominated for a bunch of Oscars and Best Picture, and I have no doubt it will be. I liked this movie, but I don't think most people will.
Okay.
And
is this for the movie nerds?
It's solely for movie nerds and people over the age of 50.
Okay.
Now, there's nothing like inherently bad about it. And well, I'll just set up the movie. So it's about a young Steven Spielberg, although his character's name is Sammy in this. Like he changes the name of his family. They're not the Spielbergs, obviously. They're the Fablemans,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just him discovering movies and how him making movies as a youth sort of helped him get through like his parents' marriage falling apart. And there's some great performances in it, and I think the kid who plays young Steven Spielberg, he's really good. It's shot beautifully, as all Spielberg movies pretty
That's
much
a
are.
given.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a given. So it's like technically like well acted, well directed, well written. It's got all the elements of a great film. It's just I think that the story itself didn't really captivate me in the way I wanted to, because it never, I think, leaned in hard enough to one aspect or the other. Because it is a coming of age story, but it never felt like it was trying to, like, Steven Spielberg's character never felt like it never dealt with his, like, there's a ton of him making movies with his friends, but it was never really about him like learning movie making or anything
Sure.
like that.
Okay.
Or
Right. He saw a movie, he liked it, he started doing it, and now he's Steven Spielberg.
and essentially, yeah. Or like, his parents' marriage is failing, and then like his mom may be having an affair with someone else, and but it was never just like, it was just kind of like, hey, this is something that's going on. I'm upset about it, but we have one scene about it, and now it's kind of, I'm over it kind of thing. It just never really felt like it didn't know which direction to go in terms of like, because it's telling this story of like basically from age 7 to 18. Uh, and I just never felt emotionally invested in any characters all that much, other than Steven Spielberg. Like he's got 3 sisters, and it felt like they should be more important because this
Mm-hmm.
is like kind of a family story, even though yes, it's Steven Spielberg's story, but like they just kind of get pushed to the side, and they like there's some talented young actresses, but they never really get to do that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like Michelle Williams and Paul Dano as his parents in the beginning were kind of like almost like cartoony, playing into like you're like a one note character in the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
they got better. That just might have been like, oh, this, when he's young he sees them this way,
Yeah.
like my dad's a dork, my mom is this like whimsical woman.
Mm-hmm.
And as he got older, their relationship got more complicated. He saw them as people, not
Just the roles that
just
they are.
yeah, yeah. Because I didn't really like his parents in the beginning, but as it went on, I grew to like them. But the thing I really liked about his parents is that, like, I watched multiple documentaries on Steven Spielberg. So like, he's telling stories that I was like, I remember him telling those stories in the
Mm-hmm.
documentary that are now in this movie, like his mom getting a monkey and stuff because she was bored. She wanted to laugh. That's why she got a monkey. So now they just have a monkey live in the house for no reason.
That
Uh,
sounds so fake.
um, and yeah, and there's scenes in this where I'm like, I I don't know if this is like true or if this is like I am uh making it more cinematic than it actually was, kind of
Okay.
thing. But I'll get into that in a second. Uh, but yeah, so I liked that both of his parents were so supportive
Mm-hmm.
throughout. Like his dad was just, he kind of like, his dad was always his villain, I feel like. And like, if you look at the documentaries and he's talking about it, it's like, yeah, my dad didn't really like support my dreams. He wanted me to be like, focus more on school. And like his dad was that. He's just like, oh, your filmmaking is like a hobby. But anytime like Steven like showed a film in school or whatever, it's something that he made, his dad was like there in the seat, like watching him and like, oh my God, my son is talented. Like he knew his son was good. He just
Mm-hmm.
didn't think it was gonna become the thing
Sure.
it was gonna be for the
Yeah.
rest of his life. And his mom was obviously supportive because she was the artsy one,
Mm-hmm.
but she's also the one who's like breaking the family apart. So
Mm.
it's like, so my mom is the one who supports me. Like I'm a mama's boy kind of thing, but she's making my life harder, where my
Yeah.
dad is doing everything he can to like keep this family together and pays the bills, and he's actually a good dude,
Mm-hmm.
but he thinks my passion is stupid,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So there's some good stuff in there, but it never really like dives deep enough into it.
Okay.
But like all the filmmaking stuff is great. Like him like making movies with his friends, like you can see from the get-go, it's like there's natural talent here that just can't be taught. And just, it just seemed like so much fun. Like I wish I could go back to that age where like I could just call my friends who could like don't have anything better to do
Yeah.
and just make movies.
Mhm.
Because you can't do that now because everyone's got like wives or children or just
Sure.
jobs and
Kids
responsibilities.
can do that now very easily.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
with their cell phones. Lucky
Yeah.
ducks.
Because that's kind of the stuff that I wanted to connect more with. Like, I just wish it was less about his family struggles, and that was just more of a background thing, and more about Steven becoming the filmmaker, like learning the tricks that helped him become the filmmaker he is today. Like, that's the stuff I was more interested in, and maybe that's why I didn't connect with it. Because, like, when you think of coming of age stories, like this movie reminded me of Boyhood, but not in a bad way, because I fucking hate Boyhood. I thought Boyhood was so pretentious and boring and lame, and I don't see how it got close to anywhere close to being a Best Picture frontrunner, but it was.
It's a great concept.
Yeah, 100%. The idea of like shooting a movie over 12 years, awesome.
Amazing.
But make it an interesting movie. I hate Boyhood.
Like they just rested on the gimmick.
Yeah, so much. But like him making that war movie, Escape to Nowhere, like I remember, I think I was freshman in high school or maybe in like 8th grade in middle school or something, and I saw some, like they did a documentary about Steven Spielberg and he talked about that movie and saw him making a war movie with his friends as a teenager. It's like, I can do that. And so I got some friends from school and I went out and shot like a war movie at the park or whatever, and it was just like this thing of just this is what I'm into. Like that's what I connected with. It's like, this should have been about a boy who discovers his love of movies, and yeah, it helps him deal with trauma, but it never really like leaned into anything. So
I feel like I'd want to see the like a fresh face 18-year-old Steven Spielberg has like made it to Hollywood and he's someone's assistant on a set of a movie and he's learning from the lighting guy and the producers and stuff, and he's getting all this inside information even though he's just the guy that gets the director his coffee, and you see all the little details of things he would do in the future be presented to him. Like I want to see Steven Spielberg learn how to make movies. I don't want to see him using movies to like cope with his family problems. And I keep picturing like Super 8. Because everyone said like it's a very Spielbergian movie anyways. You got kids making movies. So I just feel like I'd watch this and be like, Super 8's better.
Yeah, so the at the beginning of the movie, like the movie opens with him as like a young boy going to his first movie experience. And I think the movie was I forget what movie it was, but there was a big
The Mask of Zorro, and his parents went out the back alley.
But there was a big train crash sequence, and like that was sort of what set him off on his journey to make movies. Like he made movies because he shot things that scared him, and so he wanted to film. He got a toy train set for Christmas, and so he wanted to film that crashing so he could get over his fear of like trains crashing. And so he shot it. Like that was his first home movie, was this train thing. But you were saying like, I want to see Steven Spielberg like on his set. I'm gonna spoil the ending of the movie for you and anyone listening, so skip ahead. But the very end of the movie, he's like living with his dad, and he's just like, Dad, my life's going nowhere. I think he's just like 2 years into college or whatever. And he hates college and he wants to quit. And he's just like, all I want to do is make movies, and I can't. And I've wrote all these letters to studios to try and get me a job, and like no one's writing me back. And then he does get a letter, and he goes and he meets I just had it up. Oh yeah, and he walks into this office and he's talking to Greg Grunberg. You know who that is?
Yeah, from Lost, the pilot from Lost.
The pilot from Lost, yeah. I was just
Heroes.
like, wait, yeah. It's like, wait, is this a J.J. Abrams thing? Because like that's J.J. Abrams guy.
Yeah,
he's in it. But he's like, there's someone I want you to meet, and he meets John Ford, a huge director of that time who made a ton of movies Spielberg loved, and he's played by David Lynch, which I didn't even recognize because he had an eye patch, and but he was just like,
"Hey, little Steven Spielberg, I want to show you how movies are made."
And it's kind of like a cute little ending. It's just like this whole movie that was kind of just like it wasn't really a dark movie, but it was just this family drama. It ends in like almost like I'm off to the movies, hopeful way kind of thing, because he met like one of his childhood heroes, and he kind of like taught him lessons like, never forget this: if the sun rises at the top, it's great. If it's at the bottom, it's great. If the sun rises in the middle, it's boring as shit. Now get out of my fucking office. And like it was a 1 minute long meeting, and Steven Spielberg was just like, thank you, Mr. Ford, and just like scurried off, and he's like walking down a movie set kind of thing, and like that's the end.
Jumps up, clicks his heels, freeze frame.
Almost exactly, like almost did it, almost.
Zippity.
Yeah, so it was very cute, and the camera pans up, like looking at the sunrise in the distance. And I was like, okay, but then once the movie was over, I was like, that was fine. Now give me the 80s cocaine era of him hanging out with Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, him, and Martin Scorsese, just all like the bad boys of filmmaking of the 80s or the 70s, 80s era. Like, give me that shit. Like, I want to see Spielberg like struggling to make Jaws. Like, we can't get this fucking shark to work. And
maybe
it's
we'll
like,
make a sequel. The Fate of the Fablemans.
Too fast, too Fablemans.
Too Fable, Too Man. Fableman X.
So yeah, I wish now that this is over, it's like, okay, that was pretty good, but it's not going to be a movie I recommend to people because I don't think, unless you're a Spielberg fan, a big movie fan, or just an old person who likes Oscar Beatty stuff, it's just like, oh, I remember the 70s, or my grandpa lived in a house just like that kind of.
I remember Tom Ford, or whatever you said.
John Ford. I wouldn't recommend it, but I just wish it's like, okay, if this was the first one in the trilogy of Spielberg, it's like, okay, this is Spielberg 7 through 18. Okay, this is Spielberg 20 through 30 or 35 or whatever, like making Jaws, Jurassic Park, like hit after Schindler's List, all like the best stuff, like what sort of that era was.
Like end on a Jurassic Park and then have part 3.
Well, I think you probably end on like Saving Private Ryan, like winning Best Director.
Okay.
Or I guess he won Best Director in 92 for Schindler's List.
Okay.
So, and then Jurassic Park was after that. I don't know. Yeah. You could do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, either or.
Like that era where he was just like hit after hit after hit after hit. He was just like unstoppable. And then you had like the fumbles of like 1941 and like that kind of stuff. And then show me late stage of just like, this is Spielberg doing all his like personal stuff and like trying new genres and stuff, and like his experimental phase late in his life until it's like, and then until he stops making movies or whatever.
And then at the end of that one, it's like, wow, Steven, you've done it all. What do you want to do next? Like, kind of want to tell my own story. And then it's like the pitch for the Fablemans Part 1, and it's just constant loop.
Yeah.
And it just goes back into that first one.
But I mean, I love Spielberg, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, as should be a shock to no one, because I don't think there's ever been a filmmaker who's made so many great films that have just been part of people's like childhoods and formative in their love of movies, and who has been dissected the way he has and how he makes movies. So I'm glad he's still making good shit at his age, because lots of filmmakers, you know, kind of drop off after they do like their first 2 or 3, and it's like now they're just kind of going through the motions like, well, I need to make something and I need to make money. Steven Spielberg still, there's a reason he's the greatest of all time.
And can walk into a room and be like, I'm making this, and like, okie dokie. It's like him and Tarantino, about it. I think even like Scorsese still has trouble.
Scorsese struggles all the time. It's like, but sometimes in Scorsese's well, not in Scorsese's defense, I guess, like some of his pitches are tough. He's like, I want to make a movie about 2 Jesuit priests in 17th century Japan.
Yeah. 2 little kids in a train station, and they find a robot or something.
Like Scorsese's pretty much my favorite director.
And I bet he's like,
he makes some hard watches sometimes.
I could see him being like, when the execs are like, oh, pitch us, I could see him being like, fuck, I'm Martin Scorsese. I shouldn't have to pitch shit. You just give me the money and let me do my thing. Where Spielberg knows how to play ball and will schmooze. I can see Scorsese just like, I'm not on this shit.
That's always the argument I make. That's a big distinguish between Spielberg and Scorsese. Scorsese's like, I'm making Oscar films. I don't give a shit who sees it. I mean, I'm sure he does care, and like he wants an audience. Like, but like his most successful movie of all time is Wolf of Wall Street. But it wasn't like, that was a big hit. But it wasn't like I made $500 million. It's like, I'm Steven Spielberg. Every movie I make makes at least $100 million, and they're good. So it's hard to. They're 2 greats, but 2 different styles completely.
Definitely. I would love to see, you know, I've always had the idea of you have one script and you give it to multiple directors and they get to pick their own cast, their own crew. They have to make it exactly how it's supposed to be in the script, and maybe it has a twist ending and you allow them to make their own twist. And you just see, well, what's the final product? How different is a movie when you have different music people who have different ideas, and different lighting people, different actors? So I would love to see a Scorsese, Spielberg, movie off. Like they each gotta make the same thing.
Yeah, or if it's just like the first 2 acts are exactly the same, you get to make the third
Make
act.
the third.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. I'm looking forward to probably never watching that.
I didn't expect you to.
Yeah.
And I would tell you not to.
Okay. I
Because
was
I know you, and I just don't think you'd connect with it. Because
thought
I
about
barely
it.
connected with it.
When I got up today, I was playing God of War. I was like, oh shit, I gotta watch Pinocchio. So I turned it off, started watching Pinocchio, and fell asleep. But I did have a second thinking, like, maybe I'll go see Fablemans as well, and I'll surprise Steve for the podcast, and we'll have this like nuanced conversation. I probably would have fallen asleep in the theater.
Sure.
And now I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. It is.
Did you know Avatar is over 3 hours?
That doesn't surprise me.
That's insane. It's like 3.5 hours.
But I think that'll be such a visual spectacle. You won't. I think that'll go by quick. Where Fablemans, I was never bored, but it was getting at points where I was like, this. I could see something else happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get to our main topic: Disney's Star Wars Andor, a Star Wars story starring Andor.
Say that 5 times fast.
So Disney released the show nobody asked for, a show about a side character. I wouldn't even call him like the second lead of Rogue One. He's just kind of there with everybody else. They needed to tack the show on a pre-existing character. It's hard for them to just come up with something completely foreign. You want people to have some inkling and call back. And if you're going to make a show about the rise of the rebels, if you called it Mon Mothma, I don't think people would have really cared. I think that would have turned off a lot of people. But like, ooh, Andor.
Is that the new Godzilla villain? Cool.
Like, I remember that guy. Oh, he like shot that dude at the beginning of Rogue One. Oh, he's a badass. So let's have a new Han Solo or something. So this is the story of the start of the Rebel Empire, or at least, it's been going for a little bit, but it's small groundswells, and they're really finally making a push to stopping the Empire, because it's 5 years before the
Battle of Yavin.
Yeah, the Battle of Yavin, which is, for those who don't know Star Wars, when the first Death Star blew up. So that means like Luke Skywalker is like 13 right now, just for context of bigger picture. I watched this, like, I was waiting until 3:30 to the clock to flip over to start Andor, because I love this show. This is the best Star Wars thing that has ever existed. Now, I'm not going to count the original trilogy. That's what everything's based off of, so it gets to stand alone. But anything else that has come out since, any game, any cartoon, comic book, I don't care. This is the best thing that they've ever done. Steve, tell me you agree with me.
No.
So did you like this at all?
I found it enjoyable enough.
Okay.
As anyone who's listened to our podcast knows, I've been anti-watching Andor until it was completely over, because I didn't want to like jump in the show and just have felt like I had to suffer week to week if I didn't like it. I was just like, let me wait till the end and hear what people have to say. If people love it, I'll check it out. And people loved it, so I gave it a fair shot. There's a lot.
Did you really give it a fair shot, or did you watch it on your way to work in your car?
No. I I thought about it. I was like, no. Let me. I'll be honest about it. I mean, I watch it at work, sometimes in pieces,
Sure,
but my eyes never left the screen. Yeah. There's a lot I liked about it, but I think I liked Mandalorian more. But for me, it was just, I think the first 4 episodes were a slog, and they like if you took this story and made it into a movie, those first 4 episodes you could have essentially condensed to like 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
So the first 4 episodes just felt like, can we get to the heist? Because this is just taking forever. Like, I wasn't engaged by any of the characters. And then the heist episode was solid. And then it got to the prison stuff. phenomenal.
Best
The prison stuff is great. Like I would have loved an entire season of just the prison stuff, like building to an escape.
Okay.
But I'm like the fact that it only lasts 3 episodes. I'm also okay with that because it worked.
That's the best thing about this show is like it's the first 3 episodes is the intro, and then you have the heist, then you have the 3 episodes of prison, and then the 3 episode of like the rebellion pretty much at the end. I like that it was separated into chunks. So even if you didn't like this one chunk, give it a few episodes, you're going to get into a new chunk.
And when the prison stuff was over, and I think there was like I said, an episode or 2 leading up to the finale. And the finale I liked for the most part. My biggest complaint with this show is just the characters. I'm a character guy, and like the story was fine. I like seeing the beginning of the rebellion, and him meeting, these different cast of characters who are sort of teaching him something about the rebellion. Like the heist crew, I liked, but we didn't spend enough time with them.
We had 3 episodes with them.
Yeah, but I never really felt like I got to know them or they were all likable enough. Like the only person who was sort of anywhere likable was the kid who was just like, here's my dossier manifesto.
Yeah.
Like that was a sweet kid. But everyone else, like there was the former stormtrooper who was a dickhead. There was the guy from the Bear who was a total dickhead who like Andor ends up shooting because he was like, how about we steal his money?
Yeah.
There was the chick who was just like, I don't trust you, you're a piece of shit, but I need you here because boss man says you got to be here. Like everyone on that crew fucking didn't like that guy.
Can you blame them? Their whole society, their whole thing was this secret organization.
100%. I get that. It's just usually you have these, you join in, everyone doesn't like you, and then you build relationships with everybody, and then when it's time for the heist, it's like, okay, I trust you, we're on the same page. Like that, you find some crowd. I'm not saying they all have to be best friends and like we're gonna jump in front of a bullet for Andor. I don't need any of that shit. But it just like they all pretty much died on this mission, and I didn't feel anything. And it's just like, okay, they were just here to die, and it's like I should feel bad, but I don't. And Andor clearly doesn't feel bad, or at least doesn't, he's lived a tough life, and he's like learned to like leave all that stuff behind. They're just like, okay, you introduced all these characters, you killed them off, which like good for you. You pulled a Rogue One before Rogue One happened. Okay, cool, because Rogue One was essentially a heist movie too.
Yeah.
But all those characters, I think, in Rogue One were memorable and like they were all different.
Complete opposite. Everyone from Rogue One is completely forgettable, are not characters at all. I felt each one of these people, you can read the hardship and everything that they've gone through just from the looks that they give. But like, there's more character in these 3 episodes of these handful of characters than the whole movie of Rogue One. No one is a character in Rogue One. It's baffling. Like Cassian Andor is only okay in that. Now that I've watched Andor and then I rewatched Rogue One, I could put all that stuff on him and go like, oh, that's how he is. But alone by itself, he's not even a character. That movie is so devoid of anything but references.
I mean, Andor is probably my least favorite of that group in Rogue One.
Sure. I mean, they all suck. None of them are good. I mean, the robot, I guess, but even on like a second or third viewing, he's not as funny as like your first.
Sure. Okay.
Everyone,
I mean, that's all jokes.
Everyone on that crew sucks because there's no character to them. They're lame. Whereas this, everyone, I think, is fleshed out enough. And okay, you could maybe argue that.
Are we still just talking about the heist crew?
I'm saying like the heist crew, maybe they're not as fleshed out because, yeah, they are going to die. And there's only going to be 2 of them that remain. And one of them, I can't remember her name, but the main woman's girlfriend, what's her name? Cinta.
Yeah, Cinta.
Cinta. She doesn't really do a whole lot. She just kind of scowls the whole time. Yeah. But she doesn't get to stab a dude in the chest. I love that at the end. And it's just like, oh, peasant girl, what are you doing? And she's just like, I don't have time for this fucking shit. And just murders him. It was great. But like,
I can't. This is absurd. It's like this girl who doesn't speak the entire show. She's a character, but all right, whatever.
But I see the character behind why she is as she is, and we'll get more with her in season 2.
It's just they're all like, we've all been scorned by the Empire, so we're angry. that's the character for me.
Yeah,
Like
that's the rebellion. That's what, like, everybody has kind of had that same bullshit thing happen to them. The
Sure.
Empire is oppressive, and so we're all doing a thing. So you don't have to go like, well, the Empire, stole my land, and the Empire murdered my mom, and they don't have to have all
I'm not
these
talking
very
about a bunch of
specific
different.
things.
I'm not
It's
talking
just
about it.
Empire is bad, and we're all pissed off, and that's all the character you really need for any of these people, especially since that they're gonna.
That's all you need for these people because they die instantly. Like we don't get to need.
And
you don't
everybody else is way more fleshed out. Mon Mothma, I was excited every time
I'm
she
not
popped.
talking about Mon Mothma.
I know.
though.
We're saying the people on the crew have very limited character because they're not as important to the bigger story because
Okay.
they are just there to do this thing and then die.
Mhm.
It's an inciting event for the rest of the show. So your complaint of them not having a lot of character, okay, fine, but everybody else in the entire show is such a good character that it doesn't matter that these few people aren't as fleshed out as you want them to be because freaking like Cyril is an amazing character and Dedra, one of the best Star Wars characters to exist. His mom, the fucking droid, is one of the best droids that ever existed. Like everybody else in the show is so on a higher level.
Okay. Well, I will agree that I think Cyril and Dedra.
Yeah. Can't be Deirdre because that's an Earth name. You got to make it. Got to make a Star Wars.
I think yes, those two are characters. I didn't like Cyril, but that's a testament to just him. That's his character is for me not to like him just because he's like wormy and like it just seems like mommy issue stuff. Like I just didn't.
Yeah,
I hated his mom.
He's supposed to be a little slimy, and you're supposed to hate him. And that mom. Oh, what a piece of work.
Yeah. So anytime he was on screen, I just didn't enjoy him. But I know that's the point. But Dedra. Sorry, I'm gonna keep doing that.
That's fine.
Dedra. She's great.
Just lip curling, snarling, evil, just like climbing the ladder and doesn't matter, step on anybody to get ahead, and just knowing that what the Empire is doing is for the greater good, and it doesn't matter how awful we have to be, it's all for the greater good.
Yeah.
I love her.
I'll be interested to see if she's one of those people who, like, because we never see her and other stuff, is she going to be like just the main villain throughout the entire series, or is she going to be like one character who's like she starts out as the villain and then over time like goes over to Cassian's way of thinking and then becomes
Well, since this is only going to be 2 seasons, I don't think we have enough time for that.
I thought it was going to be 5.
No, I think they said they had enough story they could go to 5, but Cassian, what's his name? Diego Luna. He was like, I'm not doing this for 5. I'll give you 2. So like, okay, we'll do 2. Now, they could go to 5 and say like at the end of 2, he's put on carbonite, or he gets thrown into a different prison, or something happens where he's in a medical induced coma, and his girlfriend, what's her name? Bix. Now she has to rise up and kind of do some things. And then you do 3 seasons, and then the final season, we escape and we got Cassian out, but we lost a bunch of people on the way. They could, but as of right now, it's supposed to be just 2 seasons. So I don't need Dedra, maybe I was wrong. And, I'm
not saying that's what I want. No. I'm just saying I before we start, I thought this was going to be a 5-episode thing, or a 5-season thing, because I thought like, over the next 4 seasons, we're going to see him like slowly running into all the characters from Rogue One until the very last episode where he runs into Jyn. So that's her name, right?
Yeah, but she won't, because at the beginning of Rogue One, she's kind of just been bumming around being like a street rat, and she's thrown in prison, and they only hear about her at that moment. So Jyn Erso should not be showing up in this show at all.
Okay, whatever. But anyway, yeah. So just I just wasn't invested. It felt like like I said, the beginning just kind of dragged for me a bit, and then there was just. And that's kind of the thing with like Mandalorian too. It's just like there's some episodes that are just like really, really good. Like I'm invested in the first episode and the finale, and then there's just some middle episodes that are just kind of like throwaway, or just like I just didn't like this episode so much. It's just like there just never feels like every episode is a must see. Every episode is great, and I'm happy that people are loving this. And and maybe it's just Star Wars has become not for me. But here's one thing. Here's another compliment I'll give.
Yeah, say a nice thing.
Here's some nice things. The best part about the show is that it's what I asked for in terms of like, I want to see a Star Wars story that has nothing to do with fucking Jedi.
No lightsabers.
No
in this
lightsabers.
thing.
No, like the only outside character they mention is Palpatine, I think.
Yeah, and they just say like the Emperor.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, no, they say Palpatine.
Oh yeah.
He's like, he basically said,
Yeah.
I just got off the phone with Palpatine. He says this.
Yeah.
And that's it.
He can't make it to the dinner, Mon Mothma.
Yeah. I don't even think they mention Vader or anything.
Because I don't think Vader's really known amongst everyone.
So, yeah, I like that this is the rebellion story. We're not going to go into a bunch of mystical shit. And I could see them leaning that way, especially if you're just doing 2 seasons. Like, well, now we're going to run into Ahsoka or whatever at some point. No. I don't think they will. I'm just saying, like, they could if they wanted to, because we got to bring in some cool Jedi to sell toys, baby.
No fucking way. Not going to happen. You have your fucking Clone Wars and your Bad Batch and all that to do it.
But
never.
The reverse of that is, like, maybe I wanted to see a character that wasn't already pre-established. But they took a character I didn't care about so much and made a halfway decent show. But I'm more interested personally in the lore of, like, the Mandalorians and their culture, and
so also he's not Jedi, but people who also kind of do Jedi stuff. Like, oh, we have our own religion and we have our own customs.
Don't do that.
That's what it is. Because it's like that's the good thing about this is it's normal people. You rarely ever get to see normal people who aren't just like, you know, working at a bar or something, or is a senator. You got to just see normal people working normal jobs. You got to see what like regular clothes look like that weren't Jedi robes or some fancy fucking Padme Amidala stuff. You just got like normal life and what it's like to be in Cyril's like crappy his mom's little apartment and the weird corporate job that he has to do. And I mean, there's like bell ringer jobs and there's just a lot of like smaller things that we never got to see. And yeah, you still get some of the spectacle of like the what was it, the shooting star stuff, like when they were doing the heist. That was like
that was cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah, I like that part.
But it was just, it's all non-Sith, non-Jedi, and like you don't have those identifiers of, you know, people in X-Wing suits or Jedi robes. And it was just such a refreshing change of pace. And then you say, I want more Mandalorian stuff. Like, oh, you want the thing with the deep lore, with the million books that have been written about it. It just like the Jedi.
I'm not in the deep state of Star
Wars. You may not know it until you want to see it. And it's like, I'm so tired of all that. I like this little thing of walkie-talkies hitting up towers and antique. Oh, we have to talk about Luthen. Like antique dealers wearing wigs and being like rebel spies and starting the whole thing. And like that, he had the conversation with the Imperial spy. And he's like, I got to get out of this. They're going to catch me and they're going to kill me. And he's just like, fuck you. You're going to keep doing this because I've blown up my whole life and I'm never going to see, you know, the fruits of my labor. And so are you. So kick rocks, fucker.
When he said kick rocks, fucker, that really surprised me.
They said fucking Star Wars. And we got to see their written language. I don't think maybe in Obi-Wan, I think, but we see a lot more of this. We never see like a written language in Star Wars besides a few symbols. We actually got to see like script and stuff and letters and things. But anyhow.
Yeah, well, I think I saw another review where someone mentioned it's like, you know, another great thing about the show, we're not on fucking Tatooine again.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, but the planet that they spend most of their time on is essentially Tatooine, just less deserty.
It's got that same sort of like
it's got the vibe.
Hut,
yeah, clay hut.
But it's a little more established. Like
it's actually a city versus like a sand town.
Yeah, Tatooine is like a slum.
Yeah,
this is a legit place.
Yeah,
but I like that it's a place where they decommission old starships, and this is where we're getting parts, and how the rebellion is able to like hit the Empire where it hurts. There's just nothing I don't like. The only thing I would give a criticism to is we touch on his backstory, you know, being a kid.
I was about to bring this up, but you go ahead.
And it's like him and a bunch of kids and his sister on a planet. They speak a language we don't know. Because I can't remember what's it in Star Wars. Is it called Common or Basic? I can't remember which one is English.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
speaks Basic,
Yeah.
and that's like Chewbacca doesn't speak Basic. He speaks Wookieese or whatever it is. Um, so they're speaking a different language, and there was like a mining incident. We don't know if it was they hit a pocket of gas and it killed them, or pirates came down and killed everybody, because this is pre-Empire, or at least it would have had to have been like early days
Yeah.
of Empire. Um, and it's Andor getting taken by his adopted mother and father and taken off planet. And so that's how the show kind of starts, with him trying to hunt down his sister. We don't really circle around back to that. And I'm sure they have plans for it, season 2, but I really figured we'd get a little something of that towards the end. But besides that, this show was perfect.
That was another thing that bothered me, was his backstory. Not the backstory itself, it's just how they played that story out, of just like showing, here's a 2-minute clip of them seeing something land, and then more of the show goes back. Here's 2 minutes of them getting ready to go on a hike to see that thing. Back to the show. Here's them going on that hike for 2 minutes. Back to the show. Here's them. Oh, now they see the. It was just like, here's 2 minutes of like backstory every so often over like 4 episodes, just to get like, oh yep, this is where he meets his adopted mom.
Mhm.
And like, it didn't really lead to anything. Like, yeah, it established some backstory thing of just like what may have happened to his planet, where are all the adults and stuff. But it always felt like it was leading to some big crazy thing. It was just like,
She's been working with the Empire.
I was just taken by this lady
Yeah.
who I ended up loving. And it's like, that's another thing. It's just like, there wasn't a lot of time with him and his mother character. So like when she died, it's like, they were good enough actors. It was like, I believe he loves her.
Mhm.
And I like that. It's like, here are 2 people who found each other, but it also, because they barely spent any screen time together, it's like, well, I don't really care about their relationship all that much. It's like, I like the droid better, but the droid isn't in a ton either. Like, the droid makes the most, but you saying, oh, he might be the best droid who's ever droided. It's like, shut the fuck up. How so? In what way is this droid the best? No, what? I don't want to hear it. So anyway, it's just, that's where the show falls flat for me. But let's talk about the prison stuff. Oh, before we talk about the prison stuff. You're just like, oh, I like all of their just normal people, everyday thing. It's just like, where are the fucking aliens in this show? It's all human. Like, they go to this prison that holds all, like, is the Empire only arresting humanoid? I mean,
well, it might be, because if you look at the original Star Wars, there are no aliens in the Empire. They're all human.
Sure.
They are.
We're the real aliens.
They're kind of specious that way. Like, they don't care what color you are. They care what species you are, and they don't trust aliens.
Okay, fair enough.
So they could be, when they arrest these Wookiees and Tauntauns. Wait, Tauntauns are like horses. But all these other aliens, they may just be putting them down for all we know.
Okay, fair enough.
And it's like,
I'll let that slide.
We're not going to employ them at our ship disassembly things because they're gross alien monsters and stuff.
It's just for a franchise that is essentially the only kind of alien outer space franchise
besides Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah. Like, I like seeing, like, that's what makes the sort of the universe feel bigger. It's like, we're running into other creatures because we're hopping to all these different planets, but they're all inhabited by just regular humans. Like, that's boring.
We do get a few, after
we
they
get a little
escape.
bit of the Mon Mothma stuff.
Sure.
But they're in the background. That's fine. It's just, like, Cassie never runs into just
There's the 2 fishermen guys who, when they escape and they swim out and they're going to steal the ship.
Okay.
There's those 2 guys. So they exist, but it is less than The Mandalorian or Book of Boba
and maybe
Fett.
that's just a budget thing or whatever, because the show looks great. Visually
shot on sets and shot in locations.
Yeah, visually impressive.
Yeah.
And I know it's like the most boring looking place, the prison stuff, but I want to know how they did. Like, all those sets they built for that look impressive. Yeah. Like, I'd like the look of the prison.
I think they took inspiration from George Lucas's like THX 1138. It kind of has.
Oh, yes.
look.
Yeah.
No.
What the fuck is that?
You've never heard of THX 1138?
Isn't the THX that like thing that at the beginning of movies like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're connected, but that was like one of his first movies. It was like a dystopian prison thing, and it's
Oh
all
really?
white and stuff, and
Cool.
then even in like Pixar, like the 1138 is like one of those hidden Easter eggs that's in most of the Pixar things.
I thought wasn't that just like a room, the 1138? It's like, oh, this is. I thought that's what the Pixar stuff was. It doesn't have to do with some movie George Lucas did.
No,
20.
that's it's two things. No, I'm pretty sure it's called TXX.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, so the prison.
THX 1138, 1971. Robert Duvall, Donald Pleasance, and I think the Pixar thing is like 113A or something. Yeah. This is 1138.
Okay.
So I think it's just like
nerd.
I think it's just a coincidence that like that room and whatever.
Okay, fair enough. Anyhow. Whatever.
But the prison stuff is great.
The prison stuff, yeah. If there's the prison stuff is the stuff I like the most. And it just makes me when you told me Andy Serkis was in it, and I was like, oh well, that's weird because he was Snoke. I mean, obviously most people couldn't tell, and he's doing a different voice and everything.
But maybe it is Snoke.
That's what I said.
It can't be.
It can't be
because he's a clone. But
Snoke's a clone.
Well, from
I don't remember.
Rise of Skywalker, he had all like those clone pods of all the Snokes, and the Emperor was Snoke the whole time. You know that dumb hand wavy. Oh shit, we don't know how to write good stories.
Dude, I've blacked out the sequels at this point. Fair. Okay. Anyway, it just makes me and like. You know, I've always been an Andy Serkis fan. Love him as Caesar. Love him as Gollum. He's just one of those character actors who just like doesn't put in a bad performance, and he's so like he's in 3 episodes, and he's so fucking good in all of them. And like it's what I like about him also is just like he's so small. He's like the smallest dude in the room, but he's the most intimidating out of everyone. Like there's a reason these guys like listen to him, and he's just like he's fucking badass, and you never even like really see him throw a punch until like they have to like rise up. And just him making that speech to everybody and just like them all screaming like one way out. It's just like awesome. And then, like,
they all do a lemmings and they just jump over the edge.
And then just the twist of him like getting to the end is like, I can't swim. And you just don't know what happens to him. I love that. Yeah. Loved it.
And if he doesn't show up again, I mean, I'd be sad because I love Andy Serkis, but that's fine.
Yeah, I don't need to see what happens to him. I hope to see him again.
Yeah, but it's like maybe he just stood behind to deal with the Empire when they show up. Maybe he fakes a story and says, "Oh, it wasn't me; it was someone else." Who knows what he does?
He kill a guard, steal a uniform?
Sure, try to get off that way.
Does he like? Are the guards coming and he rips off a door and tries to Titanic it out of there? You know?
Does he, blow up the whole facility once the Empire shows up? Maybe I'll take a bunch of guys out with me.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But yeah, the show is ultimately fine for me. Okay. Wouldn't say it's bad. Would recommend it to any Star Wars fans. Like I'd recommend it to most people who are just like, hey man, you want something to watch? Andor's pretty solid. If you like Star Wars, if you like action adventure kind of stuff, like that might be for you. But I wanted it to blow me away, and it didn't. I'm not even saying Mandalorian blows me away. It's just I find Mandalorian more enjoyable. It's more of a fun ride, but I can also see Mandalorian being the show where like I'm like by season 3 I'm like, all right, I'm kind of over this. Versus Andor, which I think might have more upward potential for me. That's where the pluses and minuses of those, because there's episodes in season 2 of Mandalorian where I was like, I don't care about this, and like especially if you're leaning into Boba Fett stuff, because I heard it and no one likes Book of Boba Fett.
It's so bad.
So for a franchise is constantly up and down for me, and so like. If you're gonna you need to House of Dragon me or something here. Like if you're gonna continue the franchise and I'm already kind of checked out, you need to blow me away with some shit. And this was just good enough, but not great to me.
This is the Game of Thrones of Star Wars because you do have much bigger stories. You have a lot of interconnected characters, and it's not just, hey, look, remember that thing. And The Mandalorian is good because it surprised us all because, it's all shot on a stage with this screen and you wouldn't think it because look how great the effects are. And then introduction of Grogu and we're learning more about the Mandalorians than we've ever done before. But then it's, oh, look, it's a lightsaber. It's the dark saber. Oh, look, it's stormtroopers. It's an imperial an imperial officer, and it's just look at all these references. And that was the worst thing about Rogue One was that's all it was. Look, it's old Star Wars, but it's new, and so it's cool again. And so we don't really need to have that interesting story or characters and stuff because look, there's AT-AT walkers. Isn't that fucking cool? And so the Mandalorian, especially once you get into season 2, it's just like, oh look, Ahsoka Tano's here. Isn't that cool? Oh look, Boba Fett's back. And it's just instead of doing something new and different, it's let's bring all that old stuff. Oh, but what about Grogu? Yeah, it's just a little Yoda. We've seen that before and we just babyfied it. Yeah, it's cute. And he's one of the best things about the show, but it's not anything new. It's just a redo of the old stuff. It's just a remix of everything with a cool character. And I'm gonna say it's that Mandalorian theme song. I think that really just like is a little earworm. Everybody hears that little like flute going, and then they're just hard for it and ready to go. So besides Mandalorian, is there anything else in Star Wars that you think is better than Andor? Not counting the original trilogy.
I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you about Rogue One, because I'm tired of that argument. But I also haven't seen Rogue One in a long, long time. But I remember watching Rogue One and going, I really, really like that, and I would say I like that more than Andor. And this is one of those occasions where like I like the movie better than the TV show kind of thing. Because like it's easy to like, oh, I like this thing that fleshes out characters over a long period of time. Where like at least for me, from what I remember, Rogue One was just a good time for 2 hours. So but you're kind of it's like, oh, this thing that also is connected to this other thing. I don't know. But
that first hour of Rogue One is boring as shit. And I think people remember it fondly because the last 45 minutes is the big fun action thing. And it is done really well. And but yeah, rewatch it again and you'll start going like, oh yeah, this scene. Like, do you remember that there was a pilot that gets like it's mind read by like a giant black squid or octopus thing? Do you remember that happening? That's a thing that happens in Rogue One. And it's just like, what is that? That has nothing to do with anything. You should rewatch it, especially after just finishing Andor. Rewatch it and give it another go. It's real bad. Okay, it looks great. It's the best looking Star Wars movie. It's beautiful, but it is boring as fuck.
Okay.
Solo's better than Rogue One. I'm going on record. Solo is so underrated.
Yeah, I think Solo's fun. I think for me, when it comes to Star Wars, I just want it like nice and tight, and maybe just I've just enjoyed the movies more just because like I can just kind of jump into this world, and then 2.5 hours later I'm out because like the more I like ingest of this franchise and like this branching story, the more I don't care about it. And maybe that's just because we're just getting all these mega franchise and it just feels tedious to like constantly feel the need to keep up with Star Wars, keep up with Marvel, keep up with DC, keep up with whatever else is happening, to where it's just like, let me just focus on one fucking thing.
That's why movies are always going to be better than TV.
Yeah. So other than Mandalorian, and I would say no. Other than Mandalorian, I don't really care about Star Wars, and I'm not even saying I'm a mega fan of Mandalorian.
Yeah,
it's just Mandalorian is the one Star Wars thing that kind of surprised me. But like
it's that flute, I'm telling you.
That Star Wars anime thing that came out, like I didn't care about any of those, but I watched the Ronin one. Yeah, Ronin one's fucking awesome.
It's dope. Yeah,
it's cool as hell. But do I care about that in the grand scheme of Star Wars?
Yeah.
No.
Do you want to see more episodes of that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Star Wars is just one of those things where it just feels like I have to watch it because it's the water cooler thing.
Yeah.
But I just don't think anything in Star Wars is that good.
So are you going to watch season 2?
If I hear it's great, maybe. But once all the episodes air, I'm not going to, I probably won't watch it week to week. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe if I watched it week to week, I'd forget everything I watched versus like I just ingested it all over like 3 or 4 days versus like, oh, I watched it week to week. I kind of broke down. I had time to sit and think about it and go like, okay, I like this about the episode. I didn't like this. Versus like, here's the entire book I read in one sitting. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. It's not like, but I didn't sit there and like I watched 5 episodes and so because like over 5 hours, you'd be like, oh God, I'm so tired of this.
Yeah.
Like, why am I still watching it? Like, it didn't engulf me in that way. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
All right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to
I,
disappoint you. I know you wanted it to be the thing that brings me back into the Star Wars fold, but yeah. And for any of our listeners who are just like, man, this guy doesn't like Marvel, he doesn't like Star Wars.
yeah.
I like these things. I just don't think they should be the only thing people are watching. And all it seems right now is this is only stuff I'm
Yeah.
watching.
Have you heard of the phrase to tell like people who are obsessed with Harry Potter read another book?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's they've read this series and that's all they care about, and it's the greatest thing of all time. And that is a problem with a lot of our mega franchises like Marvel and Star Wars is that's all they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And what a great time to be a fan of those things because there is so much you can ingest of any Star Wars or Marvel stuff. There's decades of comics and books to go back on if you are caught up on all the new stuff. Uh, but yes, people need to realize there's other things out there, and this isn't the be all end all of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And just because the first three Star Wars movies were a groundbreaking success and they really set the stage for cinema, that not everything that comes out as Star Wars is going to be good. There's a lot of bad Star Wars out there.
Yeah, there's a guy I've seen talk about movies and Hollywood and stuff. His name's Chris Gore. You might remember him. He
mm,
was on Screen Junkies a lot.
mm,
Um, he does movie reviews and stuff, but they also talk to him about just the movie business in general. And his favorite movie of all time is Star Wars. He
I
like
think that
anytime he needs to make a comparison to anything, he's like, well, in Star Wars, George Lucas did
yeah,
this,
yeah.
and
It is considered like the perfect movie
yeah,
because it knows how to follow like your basic screenwriting
yeah.
rules and just does them well.
So I mean, if you like Star Wars, you're not wrong.
Yeah, there's a reason why.
Yeah, there's a reason why. If Star Wars is the thing that led you to like movies or like these big action adventure stuff, great. I'm all for that. I think Star Wars is a great entryway for kids to find interest in films, but it's just the people who grow up who are our age now who are just like, oh yeah, I love I Star Wars was a movie that I loved, and now I love everything Star Wars. I get to share with my kids. I'm sure that's great to have that shared bond and connection with another person because you like a thing I like,
Mm-hmm.
and I helped you find this thing. But Star Wars was just another movie to me where it's like, yeah, I liked Star Wars. That got me interested. One of the movies that got me interested in filmmaking. But then I found the IFC channel. It led me to like Pulp Fiction and
Mm-hmm.
Clerks, and I watched all these other movies. Like, I love Star Wars. Star Wars is one of the best movies of all time. But the Star Wars franchise, I could give a fuck about. I like seeing new shit and different stories and different genres, and I want to explore them all. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure people are just like, yeah, man, I watch other stuff too. It's like, yeah, but if like your main thing is Star Wars and it's all great, then I think you need to branch out more because like
Mm-hmm.
I can't you I don't see how you can sit there and go like, yeah, everything Star Wars is great
Yeah.
because
If you watch other things, there's no way you can look back at all Star Wars and say it's all good because you've expanded by seeing other things out there and how great those can be, and it puts the bad things in perspective. So if you watch a bunch of shit, or if you watch nothing but Star Wars, I think that's fine if you say all Star Wars is great. Well, because you have no frame of reference of other things that are good, and you just think because it's got lightsabers and it's got Darth Vader, then it's cool.
yeah.
But once you start seeing some really well-made movies, you could look back and go like, oh, okay, that writing is really bad. Oh, that camera work is really bad.
Mhm.
Uh,
And I know it's not a matter for me. I'm not trying to say like, oh well, you need to be as into movies as we are. You need to understand camera work or direct. Like you need to know who the producer. Like I'm not talking about any
no.
of that. I'm just saying that like if you like Star Wars and all this is entertaining to you, and there's that you think Star Wars hasn't made anything bad, fine. But to say that other stuff isn't better than the stuff you're watching
Mhm.
would be absurd. It's like, oh yeah, I love Breaking Bad, man.
But it's no
But
Bad Batch.
yeah. Or it's like Andor's the best TV series I've ever seen. Game of Thrones, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Or The Shield, what is that? Some show from 2002. Who cares? Like
Yeah.
you watch a movie from
The 70s.
1979.
Yeah.
That's your favorite thing.
Uh-huh.
It's just I think all these people who hardcore defend everything Star Wars and anything criticism, and it's every franchise.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation before, probably on this podcast, about
Yeah.
like just people who are so into a thing that they can't seem to let other people enjoy other things
Yeah.
or have a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
That's problematic for me. And Star Wars doesn't make bad stuff. Marvel doesn't make bad stuff. Disney doesn't typically make bad stuff, but they're not known for blowing me away in terms of like the new greatest thing.
Mhm.
It's these other things that I haven't seen before. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And sometimes I watch a movie and it's just fine. Like The
Yeah.
Fablemans, Oscar-winning stuff, but like I said, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's a movie made specifically for a specific type of audience.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad The Banshees of Inisherin is not a movie I'm going to recommend to my buddies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a movie I'm glad I saw. Bones and All, I'm glad I saw it. It's
Mm-hmm.
both those movies are new and different, and I hadn't seen anything like them, and I'm glad I watched them. But do I plan on seeing them anytime soon? No. And would I recommend it to anybody other than a movie buff? No. But they should exist
Mm-hmm.
along with Star Wars. That's my rant. Andor's fine, but I'm glad everyone else likes it.
Oh, that's good.
Sorry for that rant. I don't know where that came from.
No, it's fine. It's from your soul, your heart.
Yeah.
You're passionate about these things. And
I just want people to like things and not be mad at me for not liking it.
So next week, Avatar
Oh, is it next week?
is the 16th, I think, and it's the 12th right now. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Avatar. We'll see what else, man. Hopefully I'll finish God of War and Pinocchio by then.
Have you watched the first Avatar recently?
Not recently,
Yeah.
but I've seen it enough times. I'm not one of those people who saw it once in theater and that was it. Like I was working at the theater at the time and we had a little mini max. So I saw it quite a bit in the theater. I've seen the director's cut or the extended cut at least twice. Whenever it's on TV, I kind of always pop over to it just to watch it. So it's pretty fresh in my brain. Are you going to do a rewatch?
I might, because I don't think my wife has seen it since 2009. And I think I've seen it like 2 or 3 times. So like it's one of those movies that I haven't seen in a while, but I know all the beats.
Yeah.
So nothing would be like, oh yeah, I don't think anything would be like, oh yeah, I forgot about this scene.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those movies because it's been so long, and if this is the big spectacle of the year, it'd be nice to have a refresher. So I might rewatch it. It's just a matter of finding time.
Yeah.
Especially in this next week. So
Yeah. So then after that, the week after, it's like Christmas time. You know, Christmas falls on a Sunday, so I'm pretty sure we probably won't record. I mean, I'll be free. You have a family in a life, so
yeah, it'll depend on if I have work the next day, because either if I don't or I go in late, I'll probably stay at my in-laws' house. But if I have to be back at like 5 a.m. on Monday, then I probably have to come home. So we may be able to. I'll let you know.
Yeah, and maybe we just have to take a week off. So I'd say we do Avatar. And if we have to take some time off, no biggie, but it'll give us time to start formulating our lists, our best and worst of the year, movies, TVs, video games, everything, and are looking forward into 2023. We can maybe do that a little better. Last year, we were a little chaotic. I didn't give you all the categories that I wanted to talk about. And then then the Sunday would be the 31st. New Year's Day. No, I'm sorry, the first New Year's Day. Maybe we can start the podcast fresh on that day, and we'll do our year in review then. So we'll just kind of have to play it by ear in the next coming weeks.
Other than Avatar, is there anything you wanted to see this year that you didn't get a chance to? Did you see the Weird Al movie? I forget.
No, I don't have Tubi or whatever it is.
It's on Roku. Apparently it's free.
Oh, yeah, on Roku. Yeah, but you have to pay for that.
No, Roku's free.
Well, there's no app on the PlayStation Store for it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I only said it's free because the guy at work was saying like, yeah, I watched the Weird Al movie. It's fucking hilarious. I mean, he might be stupid as shit, but
I mean,
he's
and
just like,
he
if
may
you
be
have a
saying,
Roku, it's
yeah,
free.
it's free. It's just like, yeah, you can watch this show on Netflix. It's free when you pay for Netflix, but I don't pay for the Roku service.
I don't think that's what he meant.
That has to be what it's like. It's free if you have a Roku. You have to pay for Roku. So
Let me look it up. It is
yeah,
Roku.
I mean, I'd love to see it. If I get a chance, I'll do it. But if I miss it, so be it. I want to see Glass Onion, but it's not playing anywhere around us, and so we'll have to wait until January for that. And that will just
Sorry, January for what?
Glass Onion.
Oh, Glass Onion. Yeah.
And I hear it's great.
Yeah, me
I
too.
hear it's just as good, if not better.
Yep.
And I hear Batista steals the show. So, yay! It's like I love that guy so much.
Yeah, I wanted to get Glass, and depending on when we do, if we're pushing stuff, I just wanted to get Glass Onion in to put on the list.
If you don't see it in 2022,
that's your rule. Because
that's my rule. But I mean, you could add it to your own personal list. But by the time we do that episode, you got
if I haven't seen it yet, I won't put it on the list. But I'm just saying, like, if we waited till January 15th to do a best of the year, like normal people.
No, people are putting out best of the year by like November.
Yeah, because they're screeners. They're people in the news.
Yeah, they've seen all that shit already.
But yeah, if you just made Glass Onion on December 31st, that'd be great. I would have watched it that night just so I could shove it in your face that I put on the list.
Yeah, and they really fucked that up. Like, Netflix, come on. Why not have a bigger theatrical release for this? Like, you don't make money on a lot of your shit, so why limit this? Because this could be your next sort of thing is you produce the movies, you put it out, and then 2 months later it's on Netflix. I mean, it's kind of what they're doing on Paramount Plus and Peacock. You might as well make some of that, in theater money.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll figure it all out. So if you want to get in contact with us, we are at WRPL Podcast on Gmail, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. What are you looking forward to for next year? And what is the best stuff of your year? Are you excited for Avatar? Hit us up. And as always, I'm Ben.
And I'm Steve.
Good night. I got a fucking piece of